Hi everyone. Hopefully you know me by now, but my name is Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi, and this is a beginning parenting course offered by the Leadership Society of Arizona. In the previous lesson, we discussed the no-influence paradigm, and we also discussed the first principle of that, which was individual-centered. You were also able to hear my second to the youngest brother, Isaac, who relayed his experience with the no-influence model, and you also were able to hear his lessons learned and what he eventually figured out and realized no influence and freedom really meant for him. In this lesson, we want to focus on this first principle of individual-centered. But we don't really want to focus on what it is, since we already went over it. We want to focus on how to implement it now into your parenting style. Many of you are probably wondering, what do I do to make my parenting style more individual-centered to my children? And so this is what we want to talk about today. I feel the best way to help you understand how to implement this into your parenting is to talk about some commonly asked questions and concerns that parents usually have. So let's get right into it. The first question that I'm always asked by parents is, with this model and with being individual-centered, does this mean that I can't give my child advice or give them any rules? And I tell them, no, that's not what it means. And I usually hear a sigh of relief. But let me explain. Individual-centered means that you begin with the child. So you're looking at what the child is willing to do, what the child cares about, what they want. Now within that, if you give your child a rule or you give them advice, the important thing to look for is resistance. Is the child resisting? If you give them a rule and you see that the child can actually do it and follow it, if you give them a rule and the child tells you they want it and they want to abide by it, then this is a good thing. In this case, it would be okay to do that. Same thing with advice. Children always want advice. If they ask for it, by all means, we want you as a parent to help them out, to give them advice, to give them suggestions. And this is really a good thing. But what we want to do is help you to remember that even though it's okay to give rules, even though it's okay to give advice, we want to try to minimize that as much as we can. Because we need to remember, it isn't about trying to force your child to be successful, but we're trying to allow your child room to develop. And we're trying to focus all of our resources and effort around them. The best way I can put this is, look, if you got a company, in business, I explain this to professionals all the time. If you have a company with a lot of managers, when the employees come in, do the employees have to be more skilled or less skilled? And the answer is always less skilled, because you got managers to tell them what to do and to take responsibility. But what happens as you remove the management? Now you have employees that have to know what they're doing. You have employees that have to be more skilled. Why? Because if they don't know what they're doing, then no work will get done. So what we want to do is we want to slowly remove as much of the parenting as we can, because this is the same way in parenting. The more parenting you have, then the less skilled your children have to be. But as you remove the parenting, then it requires the child to develop, the child to take accountability, and the child to be more capable. Now we realize that all children can't handle when you remove all the parenting. But we want to remove it as much as we can to let the child develop. And this is why we call it, we parent without parenting. This new model realizes that as we pull back, that the child becomes more valuable. We don't want the parent to be more valuable. We want the child to be more valuable. We want the child to be more skilled. And so, ironically, the best parenting is when you pull back and you're not even there. As much as we can, we want to become invisible. the invisible support. And this is what's really going to help the child. So even though it's okay to give them rules, even though it's okay to give them advice, we want to make sure that 90% of the time that you're just listening. You're just observing. You're just helping your child in the background. The second question that I commonly get is now parents are saying, look, I buy into this idea, I want to pull back, but now what should I do? What are some things that I can actually do to follow this individual-centered approach or principle? And I say that's a very good question. There's two things I would advise to do. The first will be to spend time with your child. This could be just talking with your child every day, or it could be spending time doing something with your child. And oftentimes parents will say, well, my child doesn't want to do anything with me, they don't want to talk with me. And I always ask them, well, what are you talking with your child about, and what are you trying to do with your child? And oftentimes they'll tell me, well, I ask them how their day is, and how school is, and how their grades are, and all these type of things. And I listen to these questions and I realize, well, your child doesn't want to talk to you about that. That's not something that's meaningful to them. That's not something they want to share with you. You have to find something that your child is willing to share with you, something that they care about. Do you ask them about their favorite rap singer or their video game that they love to play? And oftentimes parents would tell me, well, I don't ask them about that because I don't know anything about video games or rap singers or the latest TV series. And I say, I understand this, but that's why you're talking to your child. You're not talking to them to give them and talk to them about what you want to talk about. Individual-centered means you talk to them to figure out who the child is. This also, unfortunately, means when you spend time with them, you also have to spend time with them not doing what you want to do, like a 10-mile hike to develop character for your child, or going to a leadership workshop, even though definitely come to our leadership workshops. They're great, and children love them. But you can't force your child to do that. You need to find something that your child wants to do with you. Like play video games, or maybe watch the latest TV series, or do something that they really enjoy. As you do this, you will find out that your bond with your child will get closer, that you will understand where your child is coming from more, and you will find that they are willing to open up to you with more and more things about their life. Yes, it could be painful. Sometimes you could have to get into an hour conversation about League of Legends, which is a very popular video game, with your child explaining to you what the ranking system is, how they can improve, all the nuances and strategies of being able to beat the other guy. It might mean nothing to you, but you have to make it mean something to you. You have to learn about what they want. You have to learn about their goals in the game and how much they want to get to the next level. It will help you to understand who they are. It will help you to understand why they play the game so much and why it means so much to them. I actually did an experiment a little while back because we coach a lot of students, and I needed to figure out why are they getting so addicted to these games. And this is what I found out. I actually, for about 3 months, I got really into this. It was a Transformers game. It was on my phone. You can buy things in the game, and you play it with hundreds of other people. And there's competitions and everything. But what I learned from doing this is I actually found out that this is more than a game to people. As I got into this game, I started to find out they put me in a family. I joined this clan. And in this clan, they talk about everything. They actually had their own social app where you join it when you join the clan. And these people share everything about their life. They share about their dog and about where they ate. And they share about different things, and they're all over the world. And I was amazed. They actually become like a family. And on the weekends, when they have competitions, everybody has to pull their weight in the clan. And it really is a whole social circle. I found out that these games are more than just a game for these people. Oftentimes, the people who play these games, it's their life. It's their friends. It's their socializing for them. Yes, it's different than what we did when we grew up, but it means so much to them. And I really started to understand all about why these children are playing these video games so much. As you do this with your child, and as you see the world from their eyes, you're going to begin to realize who they are. And it's going to allow you to know how you can help them even more. It will also allow them to open up to you more. And so that's the first thing, is spend time. Talk to them. Do things with them. But do things that they want to do. The second thing you can do is, if you need rules in your house, if you need a structure, which everybody does, include your children on that. Have them make up their own rules. Talk to them about what the protocol should be for the family, when you should eat, when you should go on activities, what you should do for your family vacations. All these different type of things. If you include them in, and you guide them slowly by slowly, then it will really help them out. And it will allow them to feel like you care about them, not that you're just trying to tell them what to do all the time. Which, whether you're a child or you're an adult, if someone's doing this to you all day long, it's never a fun thing. Now, the third thing that I usually get asked by parents is, it's really more of a statement, an observation that they see, which is, I have forced my children to do things in the past. And, for example, I've forced them to get into a sport, or even I forced them to go to your leadership workshop. And because they went, they loved it. And it got them into it, and now it changed their life. And I said, okay, that sounds reasonable. They said, well, so does this no-influence thing, does this individual-centered thing always work? I say, that's a good question. I say, now look at it this way. There's two things I have for this. The first is, yes, you might have forced them to do something past, and it might have eventually turned out well. But my question to the parents is, how do you know that your child wouldn't have figured it out anyway? It might have took them a longer time. They might not have figured it out as quickly. But what would have happened if you didn't force them to? How different would your relationship be if you didn't force them to do things? How different would your relationship be if you allowed them to figure it out on their own? And if they figured it out on their own, would it have turned out better? Right? What if your child found it and they weren't forced to do it, but they did it on their own will? Would they have gotten more out of it? Would they have been able to enjoy it more? Would they have had a better attitude from the beginning and made it so much better for them in getting into this activity or into the sport or whatever it might be? We have found that when children are left to allow themselves to develop and not be forced to do things, that they eventually, when they find their things, they find it, it might be a little slower, but when they do find things, that it turns out better for them. And they're able to really get into it more and be able to quickly figure it out once they start to find these things in their life. It also allowed them to figure out more about themselves so that they learned who they were, and not that their parent knows who they are and is getting them into these activities. You see, just because a child goes and loves something doesn't mean a child actually understood why they loved it and who they are. They might think it's just a random thing that they all of a sudden like this thing that their parents forced them into. Now, the second thing with this forcing children to do things is that we need to make sure we realize what's going on here. Even though a child might say, I don't want to do something, if the child does it, it means they were willing. So really what you need to look at is not what the child says, but what the child does. If a child does not want to do something for real, they're not going to do it. But if the child says, I don't want to do it, but they're willing to go with you, it means some part of them actually did want to do it. And so what we want to get to is we want to make sure that we realize what the child really is thinking. If the child does something, if a child follows a rule, it means they're willing. But if you see a child not following a rule, or they just won't do what you want them to do, that's when you know that's not a good thing to be pushing on your child, because that is something then that you're actually trying to force them to do. It's not something that they want to do. So this is a balancing act, especially when you start doing this individual-centered principle. You'll have to figure out who your child is. Yes, you'll make some mistakes. But the more that you do these things, the more that you spend time with your child and include them on the decisions for the family and for the structure of your family environment, the closer you'll get with them. And the more you'll know what to do, when to push, when not to push, when to put a rule, when not to put a rule. And over time, hopefully, you'll get to the point where you can sit back, relax, enjoy your time with your child, love your child, be able to have great memories with them, and just watch them be incredibly successful in their life. In this approach, this is what we want. It's less effort, and it's more enjoyable. We don't want memories filled with having to always argue with your child. We don't want memories filled with always having to try to push, always trying to have a struggle between the two of the parent and the child. We want it so that you can relax. And this is what the individual-centered approach is all about, or principle is all about. Well, thank you for joining us today. In the next video, you're going to get to hear actually my youngest brother, who will relay his experience and the lessons he learned from the no-influence environment in my family. Specifically also his perception of the individual-centered principle. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you have a great day. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video and you want to see more, press the thumbs up button below and subscribe to our channel. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below and we'll answer them in future videos.